Gregory McGrath, sir, thank you for the $20 super chat. I came to learn to smash more, and I'm finding self-actualization. God knows I hope so, sir, as long as you're still smashing. I would hate for you to be self-actualized with dry dick, you know? The material runs deep. For example, covert contracts. It's a simple concept. It doesn't branch out too much. There's no evil psych breakdown. It's just the idea that in somebody's head, they hold this idea that if I do something, this other person will reciprocate in the way that I want them to, and then I'll have a problem-free life. But I do not talk about this. It's understood. It's the should. It's the shared values. And then the other person, for whatever reason, sometimes it's the other person doesn't want to have the responsibility of it. Sometimes the other person isn't aware of it. Sometimes they just act in their own self-interest and it sucks, which it changes your expectations. Builds up a cycle of resentment. So then you resent the other person for that, then they resent you for it, and then you end up in this whole shithole. Covert contract. That's it. So guys are like, oh, okay, I can beat that one. That's great. And then they get to the point where they're in a relationship and they think, well, I bring home the bacon, I retire my wife, so she should be happy for it. I made her life better. Again, covert contract doesn't work that way. You get the entitled husband, thinks that if I bring home the bacon, she'll cook it and sleep with me and nothing happens. And you're like, oh, this is ridiculous. So you're like, fine, I'll get rid of that too. And then you end up with a new one where it's like, oh, my wife won't have sex with me, so maybe I'll learn dread. And then they practice dread for like 2 years, and then they realize at the end of it, it's like, oh, this sucks. For 2 years, I did my best to like dread this woman to sleep with me, and she never slept with me still. Now what? And you're like, oh, there's another covert contract. And it's amazing. Over the 2-year process, guys keep finding just how deep that rabbit hole of covert contracts go. And I would suggest, if you learn nothing from this channel, and I preface so many things I say with this, but if you learn nothing else from this channel, learn that the covert contracts you have are likely the reason you're so resentful at this, that, or the other thing. Is the red pill dead? Possibly, possibly not. Let's find out. Ever since it became a thing, I'll say around the subreddit times, like 2012, 2014, there was the first year and everybody loved it. There was this guy, Cuck06. He was actually a guy who got off on his wife cuckolding him. Weirdest thing ever. But he was like, yeah, I like this here because like all this talk about hypergamy, run amok, and AWOLT and that stuff. He's like, I get off on that shit. And he goes, if you want to have a guy learn something, have him get off on it. And so the idea was, this is great. So I get off on all this type of how bad women are thing, but I can talk to you guys about it from my side of things so you know exactly what to avoid. So everybody was winning on it. He kind of left at some point, I think a year or two in, and that was when the first flood of guys came in saying, this place used to be better. It's just completely gone downhill, and it's essentially dead right now. Having said that, the natural response would be, well, be the change you want to see. If you think it's dead, and if you think it's missing content, go do stuff, come back, report it. Never ends up being the case. It's always some guy who wants to be entertained, and he's pissed off when the entertainment doesn't cater to his ever-changing sensibilities. Look through their posting histories, never a post, there's no blog, there's no videos, there's no nothing. Geez, maybe it is dying. It turns out there's a core group of what I would call flavor posters. It's a term there was actually an old subreddit called Theory of Reddit. This guy broke down probably one of the smartest understandings of any type of online social space ever. He managed this place called Tumblr in Action, which was making fun of like Tumblr girls, kind of like a playful version of like anti-feminism, essentially. He noticed that at the beginning, the moderators don't count and the individual users don't count. He called flavor posters. And he said, if you look through the posts, about a dozen people were making 80% of the posts on there. So they were driving the content. They were driving the conversations that surrounded the content. They were driving the ship. And you could moderate them and kill your subreddit, or you can like encourage ones, discourage the others. There's certain tools you had, like locking posts was great to show something and show that like this isn't the kind of content we're doing, which I've used to great all the time in Married Red Pill, because some guys will ask some stupid question and then everybody makes fun of it. And then you think, just get rid of this thing. And like, no, leave it up, but just lock it. So like, you're not commenting on it, but here is a look at somebody who's so far gone, he doesn't even belong here. So at least people understand. And the idea is these flavor posters will create the atmosphere for any space. Now, when people would join, it was short, it was great. People join in, The flavor posters drive them towards the kind of content that they're looking to see here. This is how you fit in, the conversation surrounding it. And if somebody kind of steps out of line and changes the social norms, most of the time the other people either don't engage or kind of correct it, and then people acclimatize to a space. Everything goes well. Then the Eternal September happens. If you've never heard of it, Eternal September was an old BBS internet phenomenon where at the beginning of the school year, all the students would get internet access finally. And so they would flood the news groups with a bunch of shit. And the problem is when they flood too quickly, same as like when immigration happens too fast in a place, there is too many new people and not enough flavor posters. So the acclimatization process never happens. And what happens then is you get a general regression to the mean. People start acting like normal people and not as opposed to acting like an interested person in a novelty space or a niche space. Generally kills the entire vibe of a subreddit. Most of the senior kind of flavor posters, they move on and they go do their own thing because they're like, this is stupid. Same as I just talked to you about before with Tinder and Hinge and that. Once the unattractive people come in and turn Tinder into like a fat fest, they're like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm going to Bumble. I'll see you later. But it was good. And they used to set up little things like they realized if you're getting people joining too fast, and every time the media would come out with a hit piece, you know, hey, this Dr. Warlord article about how to get laid like a warlord. This is cringe. This is alt-right crap. And then, of course, people are like, oh, alt-right, horrible crap about hating women. I got to go see this for myself. And they get in there. And then you read the article and you're like, oh, so it's just a provocative title to piss off news reporters. So, and then the article here's like, I mostly do most of this stuff anyway. They just threw a bunch of language around it that's not the most attractive. I get it. And then a couple guys will be like, oh, that's kind of neat. And then they stick around. That was the cycle of growth for the Red Pill. Growth at all costs. Married Red Pill didn't really do that. Didn't do much advertising at all. I will say this to our own detriment, because Married Red Pill, 3 words. You type it into the chat or you type it into Google and the first things you get are this article by this middle-aged soccer mom. Is this the same one? Yep. Darcy Reader, the soulless subreddit for men who game their wives. And it's a angry, bitter old Bessie bitching about husbands and shit like that. And then the second one is like a university PhD study where they're like, yeah, see, most of these guys are Southeast Asian. They're all unattractive and autistic. And like Married Red Pill, the subreddit, is actually number 3 on the list. I really do consider like the Fresh and Fit podcast format to be the harbinger of the apocalypse when it comes to Red Pill. So I'm like, the capital has been milked and we are done. And I don't know how to fix that kind of problem either. Having said that, it's not dead. Like I said, people create new spaces. If there's a group of guys who are interested in this stuff and swapping notes, a space will form. The difference is like the old spaces are no longer working. And that's what you're getting with this rubber butthole thing. Okay, so that was Baron is correct too. Red Pill is not Manosphere. The Manosphere isn't Red Pill. Manosphere is just a container word that journalists use to lump all men together as a collective identity. If you're a guy online, you're part of the manosphere. That's why I always tell you that the manosphere doesn't exist, because guys aren't collectives like women. We aren't herds. We're a bunch of individuals with like interests. That's how come you can lump tradcons like Stormfronters, Red Pill guys, MGTOWs, MRAs, and all these guys lumped together. It's because, I don't know, the only thing they have in common is they all have a dick. I am assuming it's gonna do what everything does that gets popular. It starts to cater to the female audience because women spend fucking money, dude. In fact, I would not be surprised if you look back and like, I've never really watched an episode. I've only just seen a clip occasionally when somebody sends it to me. But I would bet dollars to donuts I come back if it's still around in a year and I'll see some like Dr. Phil shit on there. If they're smart. If they're smart and they want to make money, they will. If not, who knows?
Ian, not Ryan Stone. I think he's the most important guy in the world. Ryan Stone. Give a about Ryan Stone. Me and him have gone back and forth. Blah, blah, blah. Ryan Stone does not pass the 6-foot test. He's not even a man. So I don't give a Ryan Stone.